My abusive boss was fired after I complained about her. What do I say to coworkers? I am not op. Original post on Ask a Manager. Trigger warnings. Office bullying. My abusive boss was fired after I complained about her. What do I say to coworkers? January 16, 2020. Earlier this year, I took a dream job that quickly proved to be a nightmare. My manager, Hydra, has a track record of abusing and driving out her reports. From the start, she didn't even bother to hide her dislike for me. She set shifting, arbitrary goals and put up barriers to information and relationships. Made comments about my race and weight, and constantly did intentionally cruel, belittling things like assign me menial physical tasks and talk about me in the third person in my presence. I took the usual measures, including going up the chain and consulting a lawyer. But nothing worked. My physical and mental health suffered quite a bit and I finally hit a wall. So even though I hated having to do it, I fought. I filed a formal complaint, using evidence stockpiled over months. A few days after HR found in my favor, there was a shock announcement that Hydra was leaving the company, ostensibly due to burnout. I am pretty certain the resignation is a disguised termination in the wake of the HR investigation. I know that this conclusion is shared by at least a few other people in my department who were close to the situation. It's possible that some people think I got Hydra fired. I know from reading Ask a Manager that this isn't the way terminations work, but human nature. What do I say when I'm asked about Hydra's departure? I can't bring myself to agree when I'm condoled by someone with no idea what Hydra is like inside her team. Worse, some people have speculated that the department manager's style causes burnout in a positive person like Hetty. Hydra is very manipulative and has a lot of people fooled. Obviously I can't shout, "Positive? She ran you all down behind your backs." And what do I tell coworkers who were helping me professionally and emotionally during the ordeal? On one hand, I think this case speaks pretty well for our HR, and I'd like to obliquely acknowledge that a formal process actually works. But I assume the fact of a harassment investigation stays confidential even after the harasser leaves. There's a lot out there about how to respond to being harassed at work, but nothing about dealing honestly, professionally, and gracefully with a positive outcome. I take no pleasure in Hydra losing her job. Maybe I'm just numb, so I'd really appreciate it if we could skip the high fives in the comments section. Allison's advice has been removed. However, you can still access the link to read it and other comments on the story. Update 1. December 23, 2020. It's been over 6 months since Hydra suddenly quit. There's no dramatic news in this long letter, but I am doing much better and you helped make that happen. 1. Some commenters anticipated this, but there wasn't as much curiosity as I feared. I later learned that Hydra's boss, Jared, the DH, told his directs something to the effect of, "A bad thing happened to Allie. So be nice." And no, I can't tell you what. 2. Jared is not a good grandboss. I met with him long before going to HR. Within moments he called me infantile and in need of fixing, saying he'd heard an earful from Hydra. For context, I'm old enough to have college-age kids and was considered high value in previous roles. A week later, he put me on PIP with an absurd condition. 3. Hydra wasn't as bad as I thought. She was much worse. The actions she punished me for, like reaching out to internal SMEs, turned out to be essential to my role. So I think it was sabotage. I've also realized that Hydra was a bit of a BS artist who was missing a lot of the required knowledge and skills. I noticed some of those big gaps early on, but didn't realize what they meant. And yes, Her previous reports complained on their way out as she and Jared had multiple chances to fix her behavior. 4. It's not just me. Jared's department has culture and performance issues. The home office has sent in a strong people manager, Cecil, under Jared. I was reporting to Jared but now report to Cecil. Post Hydra. HR was supposed to move me away from Jared but this didn't happen. I don't know why. 5. I've learned that recovering from workplace PTSD is like escaping from Shawshank. You need time and pressure. At first, I had to push constantly at the PTSD telling me, if you do this, bad things will happen just like before. It's too late to catch up anyway. You're well and truly Ed here. Dozens of times a day, I'd tell myself, I'm going to take a moment to feel what I feel, then do what the job needs me to do. Slowly, my brain learned that I could talk to anyone, make decisions and small mistakes, crack jokes, and attract positive feedback without being hammered by ugly insults and threats. When Cecil arrived, he saw me as valuable rather than trouble and was kind about my skittishness. That's helped a lot, but months later, I still need to talk myself off the ledge at times. I remind myself this is normal. After all, I was on a greased rail to being terminated with bad reference. And I have 3 people relying on my income. Going to work every day just to be blocked and humiliated all day. Knowing she was just waiting out the clock. It was hell. So I remind myself it's okay to not be 100% okay. 6. But I am doing better. I blew past the targets Hydra missed. And also shared a very visible award for a collaboration. And best of all, I've been told by people in other departments that I am great to work with. And lower-ranking employees in my department say that they appreciate how approachable I am. That's why, for now, my place is here. I can help make the products better. And I can make this workplace better. Update to the update. Well, you must be magic. This time, it's Jared. He was likely sacked because his reason for quitting is ridiculous. They announced it internally a few hours after I emailed you. It's uncanny. I know there are perfectly rational explanations. But you've also brought good luck to a lot of people. Update 2. April 21st, 2022. I am thrilled to report that I'm now considered the go-to person for the department and was promoted. Thank you and your commenters for the advice and good magic. A lot has happened since my last update. Cecil, the reformist department head, has cleaned house. So the rest of the toxic people are gone and most of the enablers are also gone. Hardly anyone even remembers Hydra. And Cecil had 90% of these roles filled within 2 months because he enjoys a good reputation. At one point, he asked me to consider taking Hydra's old role. As one commenter jokingly predicted, I was briefly tempted by thought of karma, baby, but turned it down for 2 reasons. I'd outgrown that subject matter. And I also felt it would set back my recovery. It was the right choice and I'm happy to have been promoted to lead in a more challenging area. In terms of how I talk about that time in my career, I split the difference. I disclose that I survived workplace bullying when and only when I think the information would help new managers understand the lingering culture issues, or that it would give clarity to other employees in bad situations. When I do talk, I force myself to be brief, matter of fact, and forward-looking. I don't have to do the first anymore because of the turnover. In terms of the second, I was able to help one colleague from a different team file a claim and get support from their grand boss and nudged another out of burning the bridge. I'm not at a point where I can thank Hydra, but my experience with her gives me credibility. When I say that the HR process is worth going through, people tend to listen. If anyone is reading this from the depth of a toxic team, I want to assure you that leaving is not the only option. It's hard. but you can fight. It's uncertain, but you can win. Judge it case by case. And don't feel stupid for wanting to keep your job. Hydra forced me in front of others to recite her instructions back to her like a child. She withheld access permissions for tools I needed. Set impossible goals that made me sound bananas when I asked teams to collaborate on them. She made me serve food. And even groom her one time. We work in tech. She was mean as a snake and so sure she'd get away with everything. And God, did I want to run. But I knew that I'd feel cheated if I left. And where I work, short stints invite bad scrutiny. Another manager who was my confidant told me, remember that you work for company, not Hydra. I decided a job at this company was worth fighting for. And what's happened since validates the distinction. One more thing. It looks like when I successfully negotiated my salary, I inadvertently out-earned Hydra. Something to think about if you take a position under a long-tenured underperforming manager and she seems to hate you from day one. Update 3. June 22, 2023. I first wrote you in December 2019 about how to deal with the aftermath of blowing the whistle on a serially abusive manager, Hydra, who suddenly resigned after HR found in my favor. Shortly after my first update, Hydra's enabling boss, Jared, he who's wore and shouted, also resigned. His successor Cecil then began legally, compassionately, and efficiently cleaning house. I've now been promoted twice in a company where that's unusual, resulting in significant salary bump. Even happier news is, I successfully fought for my team to hire a quiet overachiever, Kaya. I recruited away from a much smaller role in another department. She's as great as I hoped and has just been promoted. Another previously overlooked colleague, Lindsay, moved to our team and was promoted too. This means our team is being noticed as a place where women can be themselves and still thrive. We're in tech. This representative has been a well-deserved feather in the cap for our manager Owen, who has taught me loads and has been so patient when I occasionally experience episodes of PTSD. And Grand Boss Cecil. On the note of mental health, it took me a long time and the help of a book called Forgive for Good, but I have forgiven the one remaining employee, Amy, who directly participated in harassing me. She was Hydra's other report and is still here. Like most follower types, Amy is currently harmless under good managers. I pushed myself to be collaborative and professional after Hydra left. But I didn't stop wishing Amy her just desserts. The book was critical in that it let me see what a long-term burden I was taking on in exchange for the dark, momentary pleasure of righteous anger. First, I was able to nudge Hydra and Jared out of my brain. And am now at a point where I could be normally happy for Amy if she overachieved on her goals and was promoted. That to me is a victory. Carrying the burden of hatred numbed me to joy. After I quietly forgave Amy, the news of Kaya and Lindsay's promo hit and I felt like I'd won the lottery. It made me so happy. I was goofy with it. I'm going to share one last thing. The reason Jared gave for resigning. He announced that he'd been offered a position that he knew would be his life's work. And even though our big tech asked him to please stay, he had to carpe diem. According to LinkedIn, he went to sit on the board of an outsourcing delivery app available in just a handful of cities. The gap is so painful. Most people in my org who remember Jared take it for granted he was fired. Carrying the burden of hatred numbed me to joy. What a beautiful, succinct summary of spite. The book was critical in that it let me see what a long-term burden I was taking on in exchange for the dark, momentary pleasure of righteous anger. Lotta Redditors could learn this one. Considering the period this covered, I'm amused the pandemic wasn't mentioned. I had the misfortune to work in a couple jobs where the higher-ups took delight in belittling and tormenting the hoi polloi. Can't understand the reasoning, apart from the fact that it's a wicked thing to do to people who work not for the pleasure of it, but because they need it to survive. How can they expect their victims will deliver a good work? If you're happy at work, you're happy to do your best and then some. But if you go to work with a big knot in the stomach, cough cough, minimal output and possibly quiet sabotaging, cough cough. This is a delightful and optimistic read. Deserves to be here. This is one of those awesome updates that just brightens my day. Good for her. Hydra and Jared got their just desserts. I love the term grandboss. Stealing it! Exclamation mark. Musical notes. What can I say except you're welcome? Musical notes. Reading AAM makes me feel like an alien. I couldn't imagine caring this much about my job. This hits good for me and really makes me hopefully that hanging in isn't the worst idea ever. My team's boss was demoted and moved to a whole different area of our department because she sucked so bad, and our new boss is perfect and very understanding about our team's trust issues and PTSD. Now if only my grandboss would go away. Or get us our raises. We want money. IDK. My response about people asking me about the firing of a toxic manager would be, "You're welcome." Tears of joy. Wow. I wish my HR was like this. I had the opposite experience. I filed a complaint against a toxic boss. She had 3 other employees before me who had filed complaints. Supposedly, an investigation was done, and they said she beast boss had done nothing wrong. Yet they didn't even interview several people who they said they interviewed, and these were people who I trust and were upset to find out about that nothing happened, and I had been told that they told HR spoke with them when they didn't. And I felt that I would be retaliated against, and HR told me that was okay because if she beast retaliated, then I'd have evidence of retaliation. I was pissed that they were using me as bait. I ended up transferring to a different site. Got a good boss. And she beast was still harassing me, saying I didn't complete my performance review, which I had done 6 months prior. But she sat on it and didn't do her part. She CC'd her boss onto these emails, and it became apparent that her boss realized that she beast was an asshole to me, because a month later I got a make nice email from she beast apologizing to me. And she is someone who'd rather drink poison than to ever apologize. So I know her boss made her write it. So HR knew she had been bullying me. But they didn't take action. Yet that email that was later sent told me everything I needed to know. She also had to apologize in person to my coworker, who was still supervised, and kept trying to get my coworker to cancel the meeting because obviously she didn't want to do it. I do know that she boss has threatened to sue if she is ever fired. After I left, she bullied one of the previous employees who had filed a complaint against her, and another employee filed a complaint on her behalf, and HR had to come in and tell all of the employees that if there are any issues they would now need to go to a different manager. Not she beast. Meaning WTF, does she even still have a job if she's not managing her own department?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.